Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or whatever time of day that you're currently having. Very welcome to our new approaches to integrating Oracle and Postgres database infrastructures at Postgres Vision. I'm joined by three very well-respected experts in this area, which I will ask to give a brief introduction. My name is Jan Karremans. I am a sales engineer at Enterprise DB with the happy obligation of leading sales engineering in EMEA. I'm joined today by Tim, Craig, and Jessica. Guys, if you could do a short introduction of yourself, if I may start with you, Tim.
Yeah, so I'm Tim Stewart. I'm a sales engineer as well at EDB. I've been with EDB a little under 4 years now. Prior to EDB, I spent about 25 years as an Oracle DBA and had lots of experience working with other databases such as Sybase and SQL Server as well.
Cool, thank you, Tim. Next, Craig, could you tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you, Jan. My name is Craig Arenti. I'm the CEO for Palisade Compliance. Palisade is a consulting firm, and we are in the business of helping companies with their Oracle contractual licensing and compliance challenges. I've been doing this for about 9 years. And then before that, I spent 16 years at Oracle, where I ran their contracts and business practices groups.
Cool. Thank you very much, Craig. And then last, but obviously far from least, Jessica.
Thanks. I'm Jessica Sharp. I'm professional services manager for the North America team at EDB. Before EDB, I was an independent Oracle consultant for a few years. Also currently still on the board of directors for the Dallas Oracle Users Group. So I'm not totally against Oracle. I just really like Postgres. Cool.
That's good. So you can already feel the power of Postgres going through the group here this afternoon. Well, without further ado, just let's dive into the very first question that I actually wanted to pose to each and one of you for a first short comment. And again, starting with Tim, do you think, can Postgres replace an Oracle database?
Very good question, Jan. Yes, I definitely believe so. I think it depends on the type of workloads that you have. But if you think about the capabilities of Postgres, it's a very mature database, much like Oracle. So I think it can definitely replace it.
Cool. And Jessica, if you would look at that question, how, coming from still your strong Oracle background and still feeling the love for Oracle a little bit, how would you kind of go into this?
Sure. I would agree with Tim. I would say yes, for most workloads, most databases, absolutely. Postgres is still a relational database, still happily meets most of Ted Codd's original, foundational theories for databases. And as well as you also have the power of the community behind the development for Postgres, which in my opinion and my experience is a strong advantage.
To kind of dive on that a little bit, as I come from a very strong Oracle community background myself, being a former Oracle A, so how would you kind of look at the difference between communities around Postgres and around Oracle?
With much love to the Oracle community, getting things done and actually changing the database in ways that my customers and end users seems to be a bit easier and a bit more efficient in the Postgres space because it's not proprietary. So finding that voice to give to the customer is a lot easier rather than trying to partner with Oracle and push through the giant system that it is and just be told no, end of story. Whereas with Postgres, you can put up a good fight to get what your customers need.
Right, and I've been seeing Craig nod a little bit as well. So these first two answers were a little bit from a more technical perspective, and I think you bring a business side to this as well. based on this community part and based on the original question, do you think Postgres can replace an Oracle installation? What would be your vision to that?
I think that there's an amazing opportunity for Postgres from the business side. It's interesting when we talk to clients, it's not one opinion of Oracle. There are many different opinions of Oracle and Oracle's database, depending on who you're talking to. We're typically talking to VPs and executives who actually write the checks to Oracle. And they're pretty frustrated with some of the ways Oracle does business, some of their pricing practices and things like that. So universally, when we go into clients to help them with an Oracle challenge, one of the questions they have is, how can I reduce my Oracle spend? How do I reduce my Oracle spend? And Postgres is definitely one way that we've seen clients go in that direction. So there is an eager community of potential Postgres users out there who are dying to find something else that they can use to replace Oracle.
And diving on that specific part a little deeper, Postgres obviously is focused on the database. Oracle portrays themselves as being a full stack service company. How do you see that part in replacing Postgres, replacing Oracle with Postgres fit into that complete ecosystem that customers typically deal with Oracle?
You know what, Jan, it's interesting because, obviously that's one of the selling points that Oracle has. You can buy everything from us and sort of simplify your purchasing. But that's a very expensive route to take because once you are a red stack customer, you have no leverage with Oracle. So we see customers who are, the more Oracle you use, the more you tend to pay, even per unit. So I would be cautious if I were a CIO going in that direction. And having just one vendor. Moving from Oracle to Postgres, there's many different scenarios. But one of the challenges that we see constantly, and it's not just with Postgres, but it's moving to do something that isn't Oracle. You have to overcome the technical, and you sort of have to have a product that replaces what Oracle does, and we have that here with Postgres. But then you have to overcome the contractual. So Oracle's got some pretty tight agreements with their customers and they lock in customers to a lot of spend. So you sort of need to look at both of those. It's two sides of the same coin as you want to move away from Oracle, the technical and the business side. So you really need to have a strong business case and make sure you have a path to get away from those Oracle agreements, or at least to reduce your Oracle spend as you're moving to something else like Postgres.
Cool. That's a clear answer. And sticking with you a little bit for a follow-up question, Oracle obviously has a very mature and very robust standing in the market. And what we often encounter is when you start talking about open source solutions like Postgres, it's kind of laughed away a little bit. How would you react to a peer if you would start talking about Postgres in the sense like, I'm going to switch to this Postgres database in favor of Oracle?
I don't think people are laughing anymore. I think they're very open to new solutions, and this is not so new, right? Open source database Postgres has been out there for a while. So I think you've got the attention of the market. I think that, like I said, people are eager for an alternative. You might have to prove yourself as you go in there and say, we can do this, here's how. But people definitely aren't laughing at this anymore. They are seriously looking for an alternative.
Cool. And if I would ask that question of you, Tim, how would you talk to, well, your peers obviously immediately are EDB colleagues, but if you would look at the broader DBA community that you obviously work with in your field, how would you position a play toy like Postgres to this shiny red Oracle database?
Right. Yeah. So most of my friends are from my past employers. They're Oracle DBAs, and I've been pitching Postgres to them for the past few years. Originally, they were very reluctant, not understanding that it was a true database just because it was an open source database. And now they're starting to come around. They see the power of Postgres in the blogs and things that they read and the talks that I give them. So today I just tell them it's a true relational database and it has the same power, and they can achieve what they're achieving in their Oracle environment.
Cool. And finally, Jessica, also looking at this from perhaps a more consulting perspective, and kind of integrating, bringing this new database in an existing environment. How would you kind of position this to be well received?
I think it strongly depends on who I'm talking to and their role, because I spend a lot of time dealing with a lot of different roles within teams. For my more technical peers, you all are still laughing at me in the Oracle community. I still hear it, but I hear your sarcasm. I see you coming through to the other side. I would encourage my technical community to just, not specifically to Postgres, but to just be open-minded about relational database theory at its foundation and apply that to whatever technology you're working with. That was where I started opening my mind to Postgres. And ironically, Tim was actually one of the first people that I met where those conversations about Postgres started happening. And doubly ironically, it was at an Oracle conference where we met. It was before I was with EDB. And it was just kind of, yeah, it works and it can be cheaper. End of story. Like that's kind of it. From the business perspective, that conversation is usually a lot easier because it is cheaper and it works. And that's, again, end of story. So I have found the Postgres community to be very welcoming, very warm. So to anybody still questioning it, come to the dark side.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you would touch on that, right? So you start positioning Oracle within existing infrastructures. You say this is something that simply works, but obviously you often get the question. At least I imagine that you also get that question. I have this Oracle setup. We've been doing this for the last, what is it, 25, 30 years. It's a really mission critical application. And it's super, super important for my organization. Do you think a Postgres database could really take over some of that workload? Is it really built to be that scalable in your perspective?
Yeah, I have those conversations daily. That's part of what I do here at EDB, is actually design solutions and implement them and guide customers through that process. So it comes down to, okay, what is your existing Oracle footprint? What are your high availability requirements? What are you doing for disaster recovery? You just go through the nitty gritty and show them the way through. And usually 70 to 90% is pretty straightforward. There are a few outliers and a few cases where I've said, let's look at this a little closer. Don't jump right into Postgres, but overall.
What kind of workloads would that be?
There have been a few fairly recently kind of hot topics. Very high throughput situations where you need the data available. You've got 5 nines is a good example. You need 5 nines and you've got over 100,000 TPS per second of traffic that's very write heavy, and you need it available on more than one master database. That's something where I would say, okay, well, let's look at why you need that, and maybe maybe not Postgres yet for that particular workload. Right. But with the same token, I would also look at, okay, well, let's look at what else in that environment. Can we split that down? Can we split out other applications and move those off of your Oracle footprint? Maybe those don't have the same workload or the same availability requirements. Maybe we can get you 4 nines, and let's investigate. It's probably sufficient, and you can still reduce your Oracle footprint and save a lot of money that way too.
Cool. That makes absolute sense. Craig, if you would be confronted with these kind of questions from a business perspective, what would be the way that you would be able to kind of answer that or guide the customer if they're looking to move those kind of things either away from Oracle or find a better balance in their Oracle estate for some of these things?
We have a similar conversation on the business side when we talk about Oracle licensing and Oracle contracts, where Oracle wants to lock clients into long-term agreements and these unlimited license agreements, and customers just keep doing the same thing year after year. So we've got customers who have been doing licensing Oracle that way for 15 years now. So it's just part of how they do business, but they don't understand, or they don't realize until we point it out, how much money they end up giving to Oracle that they don't have to. So we find that inertia is a very powerful force, right? We're going to keep doing the same thing until you convince me otherwise. So we will often have to walk clients through and educate them, and sort of, a powerful way to move a client in a direction is to show them that they're not the only ones doing this, right? If I can bring them use cases and case studies, and here's how other companies have done this, and being able to free themselves of these big lock-in contracts, then they're much more willing to do it. It's hard to tell someone to be the first one to do it. I think this is a great idea, you should try it, versus I know this is a great idea, here's 5 customers who did it, here's the plan. So I think as long as you've got those customer references and you can show that, like I said, and our view of the world, I always tell people, we don't get the happy Oracle customer who thinks they're spending the right amount and just loves Oracle, right? That's not our client. Our client has a problem with Oracle. It could be a business or spend or a technical issue, but they're not the happiest Oracle customer. So it's not hard to convince them to do something different.
Well, touching on that a little bit, in your expert opinion, how would you think, how many % of the current Oracle customers would fall into that niche group that would say, we're a happy customer, a happy Oracle customer paying the right amount, etc.? Do you still think that there are many out there?
I saw a poll one time. It was, what do you think of the quality of the technical support that you're getting from Oracle? I remember this, and it was, good or bad. Is it good or bad? And it was 40 people who replied bad. It was bad. And there was one person who replied good. So of course you go to that comment, you see, how could this, what's the difference here? So I went to this, and the person wrote, well, I think it's really terrible, but I just put good here so everyone would see my comments. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And that was around Oracle technical support. There are, DBAs who love the products, and there's some of their products do really well. They just cost too much, and there's too much lock-in. It's closed source, right? People want freedom, they want flexibility. They don't want to be locked into a vendor going forward.
And now quickly going to Tim, because you're basically on the forefront as a sales engineer, on the forefront of bringing this technology to these new groups. How would you kind of address this question of high availability, of scalability, and where would you see the unique benefits that potentially either Postgres or perhaps even Oracle bring here?
All right. Well, first of all, Oracle tends to give you everything that you need. So typically as an Oracle DBA, maybe you're not challenged as much. But with Postgres, there's still the opportunity to be challenged because there's newer technology and so many ways to accomplish what you need. So Postgres can definitely meet the availability, right? And I agree with Jessica. If you have requirements for 5 nines, maybe for those types of workloads, you might need to think twice and really look in detail about that. But if you have smaller transaction sets, lower requirements, Postgres can be there for you because it can scale.
Cool. And then kind of turn this question upside down. Why wouldn't you kind of advise somebody to look at Postgres? Or
why wouldn't I?
Or much rather say, why not to look at Postgres?
Right. So from my perspective, I think you should always look at Postgres. I don't think there is a situation where I would tell anyone not to look at Postgres unless they're using a prepackaged Oracle app such as the e-business suite or PeopleSoft. Other than those workloads, I would take a look at Postgres and recommend that for anyone, at least to look at it.
Cool. And well, over e-business suite again, Greg, coming to you briefly because we touched on that a little bit with the complete Oracle estate. So when would you advise a customer not to look at Postgres?
Well, like Tim said, we're always advising clients to look at all their options. When we get through the Oracle license agreements and those contracts, when it comes to implementing Postgres solutions, sometimes it's, you should do this, but not now, right? This agreement you have with Oracle, it goes for 6 more months. So now's the time to plan, now's the time to evaluate. And when it comes time to roll out, maybe that's not today, maybe that's tomorrow. So there's a timing factor with Oracle license agreements that, and again, it's not just with Postgres. This is not a problem with Postgres. This is a problem that is inherent with Oracle contracts. And we see this where customers want to take their Oracle and move it to the cloud. And we have to say, you can, but contractually you have to wait until this date, right? So for us, it's making sure they are negotiating the right contracts up front to give them flexibility to make these moves whenever they want. But sometimes we're involved after they've signed the contracts with Oracle.
Yeah. Well, that makes absolute sense. And from your perspective, Jessica, when you talked about this already a little bit, obviously with the 5 nines of availability, with the extreme high write workloads. What would be your typical call for somebody not to look at Postgres, if any?
I actually do have a very short list of databases that I will absolutely not even talk about moving to Postgres. I have to be careful about the way I word this. Keeping in mind, this is my opinion. This is not reflective of EDB in any way, shape, or form, right? If we're talking about a database that is on Exadata, and I know that Exadata has been actually tuned by a certain few people, including some former employers, no, don't come to Postgres because you're probably, I know those people, I know that they qualify the need for Exadata, and I know that they go in and they tune you in a way that you're really leveraging the actual secret sauce, which isn't something that I've seen very common in Exadata deployments. So if it hasn't been tuned and it's an Exadata, or if it hasn't been tuned by someone I know, let's talk.
Yeah. Okay, I have a fairly fairly good understanding of where this is going, and I would absolutely agree with you. And that kind of brings us then to the points like, how would you then go about talking, discussing, proposing, integrating, actually the core theme of this panel discussion, integrating that Oracle and Postgres workloads or environments to get the optimum out of that?
I'll answer first, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, I'm so sorry. I stuck with you. Yes, you're on the.
No worries. I was waiting for someone else. I was like, I don't want to be the only one talking. And I kind of leverage my Oracle background for this, but there are leading questions and conversations that we can have to identify workloads that you don't necessarily have a strong need to run on Oracle. It's hard to give an example because there are a lot of cases where we do, and again, I do this every day. This is part of my daily function. You don't have to move your entire database over. If you've got a certain application that is 5 nines and high workload, keep it on Oracle, but let's migrate the schemas for your application that has 3 or 4 9 requirements around it and a lower workload. Let's move that off of Postgres, run them side by side, and see what happens. See where you get with your other, maybe the Postgres technology will be changed. It frequently does. You just go from there.
Cool, that makes sense. Tim, if you would run into these customers saying, finding these kind of mixed workloads, what would be your typical approach to kind of start talking to these accounts?
Yeah, typically I run into these customers quite a bit. So, I mean, one approach I would have, so typically if you have like an e-business suite or PeopleSoft, I know originally I said those were cases of databases not to move, but that's a case where you can actually move a portion of that workload, just as Jessica was mentioning. So you can move some of that workload just for reporting capabilities over to Postgres, right? So that'll take the strain off of your transactional system and then have your reporting workload on Postgres.
Cool. That's a nice practical approach. From a business perspective, from a contracting licensing perspective, Craig, how would you kind of address these kind of mixed environments? As you said, the more you bring to Oracle, the more expensive it becomes. Is that also the other way around?
Absolutely. The more you have options as a technologist or a company, and you don't have to use Oracle, the better your pricing from Oracle will be. If they have to compete for your business, if they earn your business versus just thinking they deserve, they're entitled to your business. So one of the things that we're always recommending to clients is to look at alternatives. And when we go in and we do license audits, so we'll go in and look at a customer's environment, and we see, what database versions are running, what features and functions are running, what applications are running on top of that. And the more of those licenses they can free up, say they're using 1,000 Oracle database licenses, they can port some of those over to Postgres. Well, they've freed up so many licenses so they don't have to do the next deal with Oracle. We think about those clients, their goal ultimately is to spend less with Oracle. Well, the first step in that process is to stop giving Oracle more money. You're never going to spend less if you have to do the next deal. So using Postgres is an excellent way to stop the database sprawl, stop giving Oracle more money. And if you're going to continue with Oracle, it gets you a lot of leverage that you can use in that next negotiation and bring those costs down.
And is it also true that the minute you start introducing Postgres, that Oracle will be on your doorstep with their, as it was called at some point, license management services?
The audit team, that's the group I used to run at Oracle. Listen, Oracle has 400,000 or 500,000 clients around the world. They can't audit everybody who's looking at alternatives. So, there's always a risk of getting audited. As long as you're an Oracle customer, there's always a risk of an Oracle audit. The best way to not get audited is to be in compliance, whether you're using alternative technologies to supplement your Oracle or not. As long as you're taking care of business with your Oracle and you're staying in compliance, there's no reason for them to audit you. So we've never seen, in either direction, good or bad, we've never seen a change in numbers from an audit probability perspective for customers who are all Oracle versus customers who bought alternatives to Oracle.
Well, that's a very reassuring thought for everybody watching this discussion, and based on these comments, actually start looking at Postgres. So we're getting a little bit to the end of the time given to us for this discussion, and I actually wanted to close with just a general question. Tim, can you share some of your thoughts around Postgres, around the power of Postgres, and what you would advise our viewers today when they start thinking about integrating Oracle and Postgres environments?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that you should do is pay attention to the way that Postgres handles some key things. And those things would be in the areas of security and the transaction logs, probably. Just pay attention to those differences from Oracle, and then you can analyze your workloads from their perspective. Cool.
And that same question to you as well, Jessica. What are some of the wise words you want to share with us as kind of leaving thoughts when you think about the practice of integrating Oracle and Postgres workloads?
Yep. So what Tim said, he hit it on, hit the nail on the head there. In addition to that, though, if you have a strong background on the infrastructure side of Oracle, I would I would really recommend slowing down when you're studying Postgres and trying to figure out the differences, because the infrastructure layer differences are great. The data layer differences, not so much. That's do your own research, read carefully, don't believe everything you read. Be open to a little bit of a perspective shift in terms of infrastructure.
What would be the key things in there you would say, or at least the two biggest differences?
The biggest difference for me was understanding, I mean, obviously, like, you know, table schemas are the same, mostly, more or less, but I had been leveraging things like DataGuard, RMAN, and really taking tools like that for granted. And as an Oracle consultant, had been tying that into the daily tasks of maintaining databases and doing some really clever, really silly things to do migrations and so on, increase performance. And those are the things where if you're used to having that specific tool set, you have to do a bit more research with Postgres, because not everything is just built in. There are a lot of, like EDB, like we have our own, it's not RMAN, but it's our own backup tool. We have our own failover tool. Failover isn't just part of the database. You have to actually understand replication to get failover capabilities. You can't just go into it blind and, oh, my replication server is up, okay, failover. No, you actually need to understand what's going on under the hood and just be aware and be mindful of any technical decisions that are made with, you know, based on your needs.
Would it be fair to say that working with Postgres also brings the fun of technology a bit back a bit for a DBA?
Oh yeah, as a DBA, you're a lot more empowered to think. As weird as that sounds, you have a lot more control. You get to exercise your brain a lot more. So if you're somebody who frequently gets bored like me, Postgres is the way to go.
Cool, thank you very much. And then finally, obviously, Greg, your leaving thoughts this afternoon on this kind of integration quest.
So I would, you know, two thoughts come to mind. One is I've seen our clients be very successful leveraging Postgres. So it's been a great, you know, when we started the company 9 years ago, we were always looking for alternatives to give customers. And that's our job, to give them options to deal with Oracle so they're not locked into whether those business options, or point them to technical solutions that they can use and investigate. So it's been great to see our customers succeed. The other thing is sort of internally here at Palisade. I remember 7 years ago, as we were getting into this business of doing audit and compliance, the team coming to me and saying, okay, we need a database. We're going to go grab Oracle. We're going to go download it. I was like, no, you're not. Because you were asking me about audits. And I was like, there is no way I'm in this company ever going to use an Oracle database over my dead body. So that's actually how we met EDB many years ago. And it's worked great for us. So it's just been a great solution for us as well internally. So that's our database of choice.
Wow. Thank you for that personal note there. And that's unfortunately all also everything we have time for today. So Jessica, thank you very much for your insights and your wise words. Tim, thank you as well for joining us and for your insights from field. From the practical field, and thank you, Craig, for your wise insights in some of the business dealings that we have with this interesting company. From me, good afternoon or good day, good morning, and I hope it was helpful. Thank you.
Well, hello everybody. I certainly learned a bunch. I learned a bunch in that. That was really very interesting. Jessica, you're good with the audio now?
I think she's good. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Hey, great to have you. Good. Well, we have some real nice questions, and I'm happy that we have a good 13 minutes here to kind of go over them. The first question we didn't talk about, amazingly, is, or at least talk about very briefly, everyone seems to be like fixated on Oracle RAC. You know, I've done some blog entries about it. I've studied the technology. I'm not a super fan, but I think we should probably spend a minute or two, whoever wants to take on the question, and sort of say, where does that fit in? Does it fit in? What is the use case? What alternatives? Is it something we have to have?
And silence. No, we
Not all at the same
nobody
time.
wants to take the hot topic. Yeah, don't do that. Heaven forbid. We migrate customers from RAC to Postgres regularly. It's not a problem usually. We would obviously, there are a lot of deeper discussions around that. There may be different ways, different tools we want to put in place. It's doable. It's definitely doable. Sometimes it can get tricky.
It predominantly also has to do with the fact that most Oracle RAC installations are not true RAC installations, so they're kind of basically sold as a high availability solution, or to make an LMS audit go away, or something like that. So then you get these kind of makeshift. I've seen it, done it, been there. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you obviously have a bunch of options to build, just like what Jessica said, and also mentioned in the video, I guess, is you have different options to build the same kind of experience using Postgres, using some of the tools that are available both from the community as well as proprietary tools to kind of have this same kind of setup.
Well, one thing to add to that is that, when someone talks about Oracle RAC, the first question that comes to my mind is, why did they implement RAC in the first place? Because I know from my DBA days, I implemented RAC because I wanted to update my skill set. And I told my manager that we needed RAC. So why are we really using RAC? So we need to dig deep into that solution first.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks. Anybody else? We're good? Okay. The next question, how can we do, and this kind of hits a hot button for me, how can we have Postgres maintenance with 0 downtime? And the reason it hits a hot button with me is that, do they really mean 0? That's always something that I've always kind of scratched my head on. What is the 0 downtime approach to Postgres? How is it different from Oracle? Is there a difference?
No, there's no, I mean, you have fewer buzzwords and fewer, hot key phrases to throw around. But when I was an Oracle DBA, I would usually leverage a standby, switch over the traffic, do my maintenance on my main database, and then switch back. And I would say, if you're going for 0 downtime due to planned maintenance, which is usually what I find people are talking about, same concept applies. And if you're smart about your disaster recovery, you're going to minimize your unplanned downtime as well. So,
yeah, I think Jessica hit the nail on the head there. It's about planning, right? Planning that maintenance. So there are definitely tools within Postgres that will give you that minimal downtime that you need for unplanned maintenance.
Don, you want to jump in? Anybody else?
I'm just thinking about anything smart to add here, but I guess the previous speaker has kind of touched on.
Well, there's a softy question for you coming up, so we'll do that. The next question is, how do you get more applications certified on Postgres? There's probably two reasons not to go to Postgres. One, you don't want to learn any new skills. That would be one reason that you may not want to go. Another one is that you just are locked into something that's not, and I don't know what the answer to this is. I mean, one of the chat things said that there's so many more applications certified on Postgres than there have been in the past, and now pretty much all the big ones are. But sometimes you don't have a choice, and some vendors are lagging behind, and you're kind of stuck there, aren't you?
I think there are a couple of reactions you could give to that. So Oracle has done some things that makes Oracle very, very sticky. One prime example for that is Oracle Apex, for instance. If you're hooked on Apex, then you're stuck. And there is a lot of functionality inside the Oracle database that you, as an application developer, can run into and get stuck on. So those could be more from a technical side, more from an economical side as well, like company size, not having the option to kind of support multiple platforms, having a customer install base fixed on Oracle, so then starting to introduce a second platform. So those could be a couple of reasons why you wouldn't really jump to Postgres. That being said, and as you already said, Bruce, so many people and so many companies are starting to support Postgres at the moment. So I think that's changing, but those are some of the key things that we see today that still hold us back.
And you answered your softy Apex question already, so I can't give you that one. Let me ask Tim about how do you do a migration? Like, what tools are available if you're going to cloud, if you're going to on bare metal, whatever, you know, how do you calculate? There's probably a couple pieces, right? There's the data migration part, there's the application migration part, there's the issue of process and internal administration changes. How do you map that out?
Yeah, I mean, I would think the first thing is look at the use case, and if you want the easy way out, if you're coming from Oracle, use EDB. EDB has some tools that will allow you to do that. They can help you migrate directly from your Oracle environment over to the EDB Advanced Server platform that has the Oracle compatibility features within it, right? But a lot of the things that you use from Oracle can still be achieved even if you're going to a native Postgres environment. There are a lot of tools in the industry, some open source tools like Oracle 2PG is one that can take you from Oracle to Postgres as well. But you just have to map out your application needs to the database needs, and then you can make it possible.
And Jan, you probably have an opinion here as well.
Yes. Typically what you would do is indeed, what my recommendation would be is to make the quick move from Oracle to EDB Postgres. What we see a couple of customers also doing is, if they have a true open source strategy, then this is a first step that they make. So they free themselves from the Oracle overhead, freeing up funds and freeing up capability to then start working or evolving the application from advanced server to standard Postgres. And in that process, a couple of our clients also decide, well, you know, this is basically good enough. We're going to start off a new tier application on Postgres anyway, so we'll let this application live forth on the EDB version of Postgres.
Sure. So let me answer with a larger. We only have 2 minutes left, but let me ask the final question, where I think encompasses a lot of questions I'm seeing out in the chat and the Q&A, and it's the idea of lock-in. The idea that once you develop multi-master and you get that from somebody, or you have a toolkit, or you use advanced server, or, you know, how do you sort of select, once you get all this stuff layered on, how locked in are you compared to where you were with the Oracle, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with opportunity, the opportunity to choose multiple options. People are asking about AWR reports, they're asking about Drita, they're asking about multi-master. How do they do all this stuff? And the answer, I assume, is that there's just a lot of options out there for people. Jessica, what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, there are an overwhelming amount of options, actually. But I would say to anybody who needs a cheat sheet, like I did, like for the first 6 months that I used Postgres, and I'm not saying this because you're here, I'm saying this because this is genuinely, just anybody, Google Bruce Momjian, Postgres Tools. Go to his blog, he has a cheat sheet. That's all I'm saying, until you do your own research.
Yeah, it is. One of the things I've found, and the reason I blog a lot, is and Jan, you talked about it really early, that when you start out Oracle, they just say, okay, you want to do X, here's the solution. You want to do Y, here's the solution. One of the amazing things about Postgres, and I think, Jessica, you talked about this too, is just you have so many options, right? If something doesn't do exactly what you want, there's probably another tool that does. And that's overwhelming for a lot of people. And trying to understanding how they all fit together. You're coming from a case where you had no options, and Oracle provided everything to this huge spectrum of options. And that can be a challenge for people, particularly, Jessica, as you said, in the first couple months. You're just like, where do I start, right? But after a while, you start to embrace that freedom, and you actually end up being much more effective. And you talked about that, Jessica. You're always learning, you're always kind of expanding, and you're able to tailor your tools to exactly what you need. So thanks, everybody. I think it was a great session. I'm sure the audience enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the remaining sessions.
Thank you.